Jumping into the number 5 spot of the best 240Hz gaming monitors in every price range is the ASUS C27G2Z. Coming in at that $0 to $200 price point, this is super affordable, and honestly, if you just want 240Hz at the cheapest price point possible, this is going to be it. If at any point during the video you want to check out any of the 5 monitors in this video, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. Now, even at this price point, you get a 27-inch screen size with a 1920 by 1080p resolution. Refresh rate obviously hits 240Hz with FreeSync Premium, and after testing, there's no noticeable screen tearing or anything like that, which we do expect. Now, for the panel type, because of this price point, this is a VA panel. The benefit here is that you're going to get better contrast ratio, deeper blacks, but well, you're going to have ghosting. So if you do want no ghosting, or as close as you can get to no ghosting, you are going to have to go in those higher price points. This also has a slight curve of 1500R. And obviously with a VA panel, if you do go to the left or the right and view it at an angle, you are going to get some washing out that, well, the other IPS panels on this list are just not going to give you, which is not something that you want. But that is the trade-off for this price point. Now, ghosting is exactly what you'd expect here. Since this is a VA panel, there is noticeable ghosting, especially in the darker scenes. Is it unusable? Definitely not. It's still really enjoyable to game on. However, if ghosting is very, very noticeable to you, if you're very prone to noticing it, you're definitely going to have to bump up your budget. But let's talk about the panel itself. It does the speed, but how is it in terms of prettiness, beauty? Well, in SDR, this gets around 350 nits of brightness, which is actually very good for the price point. And for HDR, well, this doesn't have any HDR support, which is, again, expected. As for colors, this covers almost 90% of the DCI-P3 color gamut, which isn't amazing, but again, for this price point, and 240Hz, 27 inches, this is actually not bad. In game, this obviously isn't as vibrant and beautiful as others on the list, but the black levels are great here since this is a VA panel, and gaming on this is still a pretty enjoyable image. Overall, if you're on a really tight budget but want a competent 240Hz gaming monitor, this is a great ultra budget choice. But with that, let's move on to the $200 to $300 price range. Still very budget, but you're getting a lot more for your money here. This is the ASUS TUF Gaming VG279QM. Now this again maintains that 27-inch screen size with a 1080p resolution, but you get a lot more everywhere else here. Firstly, this has a factory overclock going all the way up to 280 Hz. Pair that with an NVIDIA certified G-Sync compatibility, and this is a very seamless variable refresh rate experience. But the big thing here is that this uses an IPS panel. This means you're going to get better colors, not quite as good contrast ratio, but the speed of the panel, the ghosting, is going to be significantly better. So let's talk about that. This is definitely a massive step up from the previous monitor. Ghosting here is exceedingly low. Even with much faster whips, this is very, very good. This is very, very good for really fast-paced gaming, like competitive style gaming, whether that's Warzone, Battlefield, whatever you want to play, Valorant even. IPS panels are for sure the way to go unless you're going to go OLED, but honestly, they're pretty much even. Most people aren't going to tell you that, but most people are wrong about that. Now, for ghosting, this changes in increments of 20, so for the best overdrive setting, the 80 and 100 settings cause a little bit of overshoot to a lot of overshoot respectively, so 60 is the best setting here. And when this is set at that 60% overdrive setting, it's kind of a weird way of doing it in the menu system, but it's actually really, really good. This not only gets you that slightly smoother 280 Hz refresh rate experience, but the ghosting is exceptionally low. But the big reason that this is one of my favorite 240, 280 Hz super budget gaming monitors is the panel itself and the beauty of it. Firstly, the brightness is insane for this price point. Way overdoing its rating, coming in at 585 nits of brightness in SDR. That is incredibly bright. That makes the image absolutely stunning. And if you're in a bright setting with windows behind your setup, this is like exceptionally bright. When you compare even much more expensive monitors, very, very, very few monitors go up above 400 nits. This is very impressive. Now, HDR performance, even with a truly fantastic brightness, is just okay. The color gamut covers the full sRGB color gamut, which is great for SDR, but in HDR, it really lacks on the colors. And most of the time, I left this in SDR and absolutely loved every second of it. SDR is the way to go if this is not an HDR monitor that you're really going to use a lot of the time. So just stick it in that and go with it. It's a fantastic monitor for the price. So overall, if you want a 240 or 280 Hz gaming monitor that doesn't break the bank, has fantastic ghosting, brightness, and a good SDR color gamut, this is a fantastic pickup for the price. But now bumping it up to that $300 to $500 price point, this is the Gigabyte M27Q-X. This is a very impressive monitor, and I think probably the monitor that 90% of you will end up buying, as this hits the perfect real middle ground for price to performance if you have a little bit more money. Now this maintains a 27-inch screen size, but now bumps it up to a 1440p resolution. The refresh rate here hits 240 Hz. This has FreeSync Premium and is NVIDIA G-Sync compatible, as you would expect. Like the last monitor, this is also an IPS panel, so again, great viewing angles, colors, and fantastic ghosting. That's the big thing. The ghosting here is very comparable to the previous monitor, which is exceptionally low. There's slight amounts of ghosting when you're in the balance setting, which is the recommended setting that I've found after testing, but this is still extremely low, and during fast-paced gaming, this is a low enough amount of ghosting where it's really not going to affect your gameplay at all. The image quality with 240 Hz is absolutely beautiful. Pair that with an IPS panel and 1440p, and it's a very, very competent and beautiful gaming setup. But let's talk about the beauty. In SDR, this is around 430 nits of brightness, and in HDR, this bumps it up to a little bit over 480 nits. Do remember, I'm not talking about highlights here, we are talking about full screen brightness, so that is a very, very good brightness. Not like the ASUS, but don't expect that this is anything other than absolutely beautiful and very, very vibrant. As for the colors here, this covers 92.4% of the DCI-P3 color space and outputs 10 bits of color, and seems to be factory calibrated, as this had fantastic color accuracy out of the box. So definitely a step up in colors compared to the previous two monitors, which makes for a much more enjoyable HDR experience. As for beauty in game, colors are vibrant and accurate, and it battles reflections quite well due to that brightness, similar to the ASUS, although the ASUS was slightly better, as that is a crazy, crazy brightness. Overall, this is not only a fast monitor, but a really, really enjoyable, beautiful gaming experience that definitely bumps it up when compared to the previous two monitors. As while they're very, very pretty, you do kind of want a little bit more resolution, especially in some games where you're doing something more like sniping or long range engagements, things like that. Overall, if you want a 240 Hz gaming monitor with a wider color coverage, 1440p resolution, great color accuracy, good brightness, and fantastic ghosting under 500 bucks, this is a great monitor, and again, probably what 90% of you are going to buy from this video. But if you want something even more premium, well, let's go into the $500 to $700 price range. This is the Alienware AW2723DF. Now this again maintains a 27-inch screen size, has a 1440p resolution, but this has a factory overclock to take it from 240 Hz natively to a 280 Hz refresh rate. But what this adds is FreeSync Premium Pro. Now this means you can have HDR on with variable refresh rate, and this is NVIDIA certified G-Sync compatible, so it works absolutely flawlessly with both graphics cards. This makes the experience really, really enjoyable to game in HDR primarily. As for the panel type, this is a nano IPS panel, so you get great wide viewing angles, great colors, and while this does have local dimming, it's only edge-lit local dimming, and it really doesn't do anything here, so that really shouldn't be something that you should think about comparing to these monitors, as it's not a great local dimming feature. As for ghosting with variable refresh rate on, this does extremely well in all settings, with the fastest and best being the extreme setting. There is still slight amounts of ghosting, but I do mean very, very slight. It's not crystal clear like some of the higher priced monitors on this list, but it is damn good, and definitely not going to be an issue during gameplay, even fast-paced gameplay at all. It's very, very good. But let's talk about the beauty, the brightness. How is it? Well, it's fantastic here. This is hitting 580 nits of brightness after testing. Again, full screen brightness, so this is a very bright panel. Reflections are a non-issue at full brightness, and as far as colors, this covers 95% of the DCI-P3 color gamut and has very vibrant and accurate colors. Out of the box, the accuracy was quite good. Now, all of this combined makes for a very good and competent HDR experience. While you're not gonna get something like super deep blacks because it doesn't have any full array local dimming, it's not mini LED lit or anything crazy like that, but for an IPS panel, this is a very good HDR experience. So overall, if you want a 280 Hz refresh rate, beautiful, vibrant image with a wide color coverage, great HDR support, while maintaining a 27-inch screen size and 1440p resolution, around 650 bucks, this is a great pickup. But with that, let's bump it up quite a bit to the $750 to $1,000 price point. This is where things get expensive. And this is actually 3 different monitors that are the same panel. This is either the 27-inch LG OLED, the Corsair OLED, the same version, it's 27 inches, or the ASUS PG27A-QDM. Now these retail for, again, about $1,000 bucks, but the reason it's in that 750 to 1,000 as they all consistently go on sale to some price, but under $1,000 bucks. You can pretty readily find them. Now, all of these obviously have a 27-inch screen size, a 240 Hz refresh rate, 1440p resolution, FreeSync Premium, and are NVIDIA G-Sync compatible. Although the LG that I had and tested could have variable refresh rate with HDR on, meaning that it would be FreeSync Premium Pro, although this is not what the monitor specs say it has, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But yeah, I was able to have variable refresh rate on with HDR, so you take that as what you will. Now, full disclaimer, I've tested the LG OLED and the Corsair OLED, which again, all three of these monitors have the exact same panel. I have not tested the ASUS, but I have heard and saw from other reviews that it seems like the ASUS may be the best one out of the three. Now, as you saw from my review, I personally wouldn't buy this monitor. I value different things in a monitor, but it doesn't mean that this still isn't an impressive panel. I just cannot stand the matte finish on this. This doesn't give you the OLED experience in terms of beauty as other ones, but it does still have that speed, and that's why it's on the list. It's totally up to you as the consumer to figure out what you personally want. Now, ghosting. Since these are all OLEDs, there is very, very little ghosting. Games are snappy, quick, and crystal clear. The smoothness of these panels is very, very noticeable. Also, if HDMI 2.1 is a necessity, the ASUS only has HDMI 2.0, unlike the LG and Corsair. But let's talk about the beauty of these panels. These are all the same panel, but there are going to be some meaningful differences. If higher peak brightness is important to you, the ASUS gets significantly brighter than the LG and Corsair by around 300 nits in HDR. So if so, the ASUS should be your pick. As far as colors, these all cover around 97 to 98% of the DCI-P3 color space, which is obviously fantastic. So the colors look very, very nice. Not as nice as they should look though, as this does have a matte finish that is one of the, in fact, it's not even one of the, it is the single thickest matte coating I have ever used on any monitor. And that's really the main thing that made me not fall in love with this monitor, and honestly not even like it for the price. When I want to get an OLED and have to deal with the possibility of burn-in after longer periods of usage, I want that panel to be absolutely stunning, and these just weren't due to the matte finish. If you don't know, matte finishes degrade picture quality. They degrade clarity, colors, black levels, everything. They just don't make an image look great, especially when having an OLED. Glossy is what you're going to see when you're just like absolutely shocked by the beauty of an OLED. Like TVs, almost all of them are glossy. So while these specs, like the very, very high color gamut, a good resolution, everything like that, perfect viewing angles, all the specs are going to point towards it being the most beautiful monitor on the list, but in reality, it just isn't. So overall, if you're set on an OLED due to the speed, I would say this is a good option. All three of those are a good option, but again, make it about speed, don't make it about beauty, because these OLEDs just, that's not their goal. But with that, let's move on to the $1,000 to $1,500 price point. This is the Samsung Odyssey Neo G8. This is a panel that has some inherent problems, but honestly, they aren't that big, and this still is one of my favorite monitors of all time. Now, this has a 32-inch screen size with a 1000R curve, which is a very curved display. It's very large, and it's absolutely stunning. The refresh rate obviously hits 240 Hz, but this is the only monitor on the list to have a 4K resolution. This has FreeSync Premium Pro, so HDR with variable refresh rate does work well, again, with G-Sync. And the interesting thing here is that this uses a VA panel, but this is the single best VA panel I have ever used on a monitor still to this day. You will have known that Samsung either has big wins or horrible losses. They have some of the worst and some of the best monitors that I've ever tested. This VA panel manages to have extremely deep blacks due to full array local dimming with a mini LED backlight and the single lowest ghosting I have ever seen on a VA panel. This has 1200 local dimming zones, giving you OLED-like black levels. This panel is far prettier than the previous OLED, even though it's an OLED and this is a VA panel, because it doesn't have that awful thick matte coating. This is a stunning monitor. If you're about beauty but you still want speed, this monitor is literally like the king of it. And again, there's no risk of burn-in. So this is a little bit more compelling to me personally, but again, make your own decisions. Now, this literally has extraordinarily low ghosting. You can see on screen, this is the ghosting. Pair that with 240 Hz, the 4K resolution. This gaming experience is probably my favorite gaming experience of any monitor that I have used. Pair the extremely cool immersion, the 32-inch screen size, 4K, fantastic HDR, a lot of things like that. Great black levels, low ghosting, like it just hits everything right. right. Let's get into the nitty gritty with the brightness. Firstly, this doesn't have a massive full screen brightness in SDR. It only hits about 350 nits, which is good, but nothing amazing. But honestly, you want to keep this in HDR all the time, which bumps it up to around 400 nits of full screen brightness, but in the highlights, this reaches over 1,000 nits of brightness. It is an absolutely beautiful dynamic image. It's still one of my favorite monitors. The color gamut is great, covering 95% of the DCI-P3 color gamut, and being factory calibrated, it's very accurate out of the box. Seriously, a jaw-droppingly beautiful image, and then you still get that 240 hertz refresh rate. Again, you're gonna want a 4090, or don't get this though, because you're not gonna be able to hit that 4K 240 hertz. And it's still, many games you're not going to be able to hit that even with a 4090, but if you have a 4090, this is like the ultimate monitor. So overall, if you want one of the most beautiful 240 hertz 4K gaming monitors out there, this is friggin' it. But again, if you want to check out any of the monitors, there's Amazon links below for the US, UK, Canada, and international links. But this is a consumer tech review, and I'll see you guys in the next video.